906 podcast, a Detroit Pistons podcast to be exact. And I'm Hudson.
And I'm Ryan.
And before we get into episode number 14 of season 3, y'all know the deal. Got to talk to you about a few quick things. First off, if you aren't so much into long form content, but happen to be viewing today's episode, make sure to hit the link in the description below. That link will shoot you to our Instagram, where you can check out a plethora of different debate topics, clips. We try to post 3 to 4 clips each and every week, so you can still be in the know with everything going on with the Detroit Pistons. If you don't happen to tune into our YouTube all the time, and maybe clips are more your style. So make sure to follow us on Instagram. And if you are new to the channel, make sure to like and subscribe. You know, we can post all the content we want, but in the end, it comes down to you, the subscribers, to help our platform grow and help the YouTube algorithm to push us out there. So please like and subscribe. And for those who don't know, we haven't been promoting it a whole lot. We will be taking a Detroit trip April 5th through the 8th. We will be watching the Detroit Pistons go up against the Sacramento Kings and the Memphis Grizzlies. And then we'll be watching the Red Wings go up against the Florida Panthers. So a lot of content will be coming from Detroit while me and Ryan are there. We'll post vlogs, podcast episodes, and a lot of stuff on our Instagram. So make sure to still follow us on Instagram to be in the know with everything we're doing in Detroit. So please like and subscribe, as a lot of content is about to come. A lot of fun content too. Me and Ryan always look forward to these Detroit trips. We have a lot of fun going and seeing around Detroit, and then also getting a lot of content out for you, the listeners. So just make sure to like and subscribe as we are quickly approaching our Detroit trip. Let's get into today's episode. And just a brief teaser before we get into today's episode. Ryan, I kind of want to take some time with what's going on with the Pistons right now. The Pistons are back on the winning side after a 3-game slide, and they beat the Portland Trailblazers. And it seemed that the Pistons got back to the basics and a good team win. And it was especially good to see Cade have a big night, because he had a few quiet games there after the All-Star break. I think he was just kind of worn out. This 82 game schedule will really get to you. But Cade came back after a few quiet games in a big way, putting up 28 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds, and 9 of 17 shooting. The true all-star that he was in full force against the Portland Trailblazers. And Ryan, it becomes more and more evident as the season carries on that when Cade is balling, the Pistons are balling. Can you just take some time to speak on the depth that Cade adds to this Detroit Pistons? Because when he's playing well, this team is playing well.
Yeah, very early on, he was more so looking for his shot than looking to pass, which usually it doesn't matter who they're playing up against. Usually he goes shot first, pass first, and then it trickles down back and forth for the rest of the game. But with Portland, he made an emphasis on going, I want the ball in my hands, and I want to be the reason why we have a lead. And just that kind of, I guess you could say, swagger around that, and how he carried it on through the rest of the game. The first half, phenomenal. Second half, great. But it really starts with his options around him. Obviously, his greatness it's obvious. But when he has Tim Hardaway Jr. playing like the way he did, you have Tobias Harris playing like a stud. Obviously, he's not going out of his way to get 20 plus every single night, but he gets a solid 12 to 15 points. You're cooking. And then Jalen Duren's doing his thing. It doesn't matter who it is out there with him. Whoever is out there makes Cade better. Last year wasn't the case. Last year you had a situation where you had Bojan Bogdanovic out there with him. Bojan would take away either shots or passes or just pretty much Cade's entire game away. And not to say that Cade has a kryptonite or anything, but I guess if he did have a kryptonite, Bojan Bogdanovic sucking could be his kryptonite. But like, you look at what he had last year and you look at what he has this year, Trajan Langdon and JV Bickerstaff have put complete trust in him and his abilities, and it's showing up each and every night out there. you're seeing a Cade who last year really was hesitant on shooting the three ball and looking to drive and create space down in the paint around the rim. Whereas this year, he's looking for his 3-point shot. There's times where he'll have a contested three and he's going to shoot that versus looking to drive immediately, which last year he did. Last year, he'd hit you with the pump fake and look to drive immediately. But now
Yeah.
he's looking for his shot more often than not. And I think him looking for his shot is opening the game up a little bit more for him, solely because all these teams that are scouting him knows, okay, he's more of a drive first player. So if we lock down the paint, he has nowhere to go there. So we can slide off him a little bit in terms of the 3-point shot because he's not a shooter. He's not as shot heavy as he is drive
Mhm.
heavy. And because of that, he's tricking these teams night in, night out, going, okay, you close off the paint, I can hit this shot. You close off the perimeter, I can drive and get to the rim. Like it doesn't matter what it is night in, night out. Cade Cunningham is playing chess games with opposing teams. And
Totally.
it's either he's looking for a shot or he's looking for other shots. It doesn't matter. He just does what the opposition gives him. He takes what is his, and it is obvious.
Yeah, it seems that he's just like a surgeon out there, maneuvering through the defense, cutting through the paint, finding the right guys around the 3-point line. He's just playing so well, and it's become very evident in these last couple of games that when Cade's on, the Pistons are on, and it's very important for Cade to play well for this Pistons team to succeed. He has a great cast of characters around him that make Cade look good, and he makes them look good. So it just the Pistons are in a really good point right now. Without further ado, let's get into episode number 14 of season 3, and we got a good one for you guys today. Today we will be predicting the final stretch of the Pistons season, and there are 16 games left, and we will be making those predictions for wins and losses in each one of those matchups pretty soon here. But before we get into that, Ryan, as we get into the final stages of this season, is there a Pistons player that you want to prove themselves before heading to the playoffs? Or is there a statistic the Pistons could improve on, whether it's free throw shooting or 3-point percentage, or is there a guy off the bench that could boost the Pistons? I'm really wondering this because what's missing from the Pistons for them to make a big splash in the playoffs? So, Ryan, where's your head at as far as that?
I think if you were to name one player in particular, and this is a shocking player to name off, but Malik Beasley. And the reason why I say
Okay.
Beasley is because the last 5 or 6 games or so, his game has gone down a notch. He's not hitting
Right.
as much threes as he had been prior. He is slowing down. He's not only making less threes, but he's shooting the ball a little bit less. But I think that's on purpose. And I think that's on purpose because you could see it as load management. Maybe JB Bickerstaff is going, okay, I need to ease off the gas a little bit with Beasley, give him some time to heal because come
Right.
playoffs, I want him to go 100%. And so that could be it too. But I don't know if that's necessarily the case either, because wouldn't you think you'd cruise through the next couple 5, 6, 7, 8 games
Yeah.
and have full pedal to the metal up until a certain amount, and then it's going like, okay, we're in the playoffs no matter what. We can take the foot off the gas, coast a little
Mhm.
bit, but still play productive basketball. Maybe I just don't know. So the bottom line is, I think Malik Beasley needs to take it up a notch again, because his shots
Totally.
aren't falling as much, and I really think when his shot is going, it adds a whole nother dynamic to this team because now you're focusing more so, okay, what is Beasley going to do to me? And if Beasley
Right.
is looking for his shot right now and he's hot, that takes off all the pressure. We go back maybe a month ago. There was a game in which the I forget who the Pistons were playing, but it was crunch time, ball going down the court. I believe it was actually against the Mavericks. Ball going down the floor. Beasley catches it on the wing and the whole team, whole defense pretty much sags his direction and leaves Cade wide open for a three, and he hits it with ease. That's what Beasley can do, even when he's having a good shooting night or not. When he is, that happens more often than not. And because of that happening, let's say that does happen in another upcoming game where he's having a great shooting night. The team looks to really focus on him, double team him, triple team him, whatever. Cade gets the ball. Somebody comes out and covers. That leaves the guy open in the corner. More often than not, that's Tim Hardaway Jr. Tim Hardaway Jr. is hitting that shot every single time. So just because of one guy having a hot night, that gives others more opportunities. So I think Beasley trying to take that step up again will open up more opportunities, not just for Cade, but others like Tim Hardaway Jr. has been on a hot streak recently. Tobias Harris has been on a hot streak. I think it opens up a lot of opportunities for the rest of the team if Malik Beasley is hot. And not to say that Cade can't will his way to a win with the guys he has around him, even if Malik isn't having a hot night, because he can. But I think Malik is the 1-2 punch to Cade Cunningham right now for the Pistons. Not to say that Duren isn't, but I really think if you take Beasley away, the Pistons become a little bit more beatable. Whereas if you have Beasley in there having a hot shooting night, it adds a whole nother dynamic. It's almost as if it's kind of like the Golden State Warriors when they had Klay Thompson and Steph Curry and the whole gang. You have all those dominoes around Curry, and you're going, okay, which one of them is going to have a good game? But Klay Thompson was always the 1-2 punch to Curry going, okay, if he's having a hot night, Curry is going off. If Beasley's having a hot night, Cade is going off. And I really think if Beasley can perform at a high level through the next 8 or so games, we can afford to coast a little bit because 16 games, not a lot of wiggle room, but it is a tough schedule for the last 16. But I think if Beasley's going, the rest of the team is going. As far as bench play goes, honestly, I mean, Beasley is the number one, but I really think it's Beasley as far as just players in general. As far as stats, I would say turnovers obviously needs to be adjusted because even though we've been good against certain teams like Portland, you're expecting to win that game. Let's be honest. I love Chauncey Billups. Arguably, in my opinion, one of the greatest point guards of all time. But the Trailblazers are extremely beatable. They just are. The Wizards coming up, who they play Tuesday night as we're recording. They'll play them Thursday. Extremely beatable. Even up the next couple of games or so, San Antonio without Victor Wembanyama, beatable. There's a lot of these teams coming up that are beatable, but I think there's just a lot of room for error. Because honestly, even though Dallas is beatable right now with the list of injuries they have, still a very hardworking team. So I think turning the ball over the less and Malik Beasley stepping up a little bit more often than not as of late, good things will happen.
I totally agree that when Malik Beasley's hitting five threes a night, the Pistons are in their best ultimate form and are very hard team to beat. So I agree. Malik Beasley is going to have to kick it into gear here as we head into the playoffs. He was also just so hot and shooting so good for a couple months there. It was just kind of what we expected from him. And now that he's like not hitting 5 to 6 threes a night, we're like, oh no, what's going on with Malik? We want those 7 threes again. So I don't know if we have to worry, but it's definitely something where it's like, okay, if we're going to win a playoff series, Malik Beasley's going to have to put up some big numbers. There are 2 names that come to mind for me. You mentioned one, Tobias Harris. Right now, he's averaging around 17 points over the last 30 days. My goodness, Tobias Harris, you're going off. If he plays like that, we do have a good shot at winning a playoff series. And so he needs to prove to me that he can keep doing this consistently, because I worry a little bit about Tobias, like with older age and dealing with maybe some lingering health issues. We have to make sure that he's going to be able to do this consistently. And if he can, I do believe the Pistons can be a very good team when the playoffs roll around. The other name that needs to prove something to me is Ron Holland. Ron Holland needs to prove to me that he can get us 10 points in a playoff game, because when Malik is playing well off the bench, when Dennis Schroeder's playing well off the bench, that's where Ron Holland has to give us 6 to 10 points. And if he can give us 6 to 10, it may seem small to a normal Pistons fan. Just 6 points, just 10 points. That's all you want from Ron Holland, Hudson? Yeah, that's all I want. Because when you have a supporting cast like this Detroit Pistons team does, a guy like Ron Holland could come in, give us 6 to 10 in key moments. That's what, Ron Holland is an energy guy. He is what swings the energy for teams. And for this Pistons team, when he makes a big time dunk, gets a steal, and makes a layup in transition, that is an energy swing in favor of the Detroit Pistons. And you need to have that in a 7-game playoff series. You need to have it. And I think Ron Holland needs to prove to me that he can be there. I worry a little bit about Ron. I've been impressed with him, but I still worry a little bit. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Ron Holland shows us in the last 16 games of this Detroit Pistons season. Ryan, let's get into the game versus game matchups. Like you mentioned, we're going to see Washington Wizards versus the Detroit Pistons on Thursday, March 13th. And we're just going to go by each game, each of these last 16 games, win loss. So Jordan Poole is at Little Caesars Arena versus the Detroit Pistons and Cade Cunningham. Ryan, win or lose?
Win.
All right, we got to win. Then Oklahoma City Thunder go to Little Caesars Arena. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander versus the great Cade Cunningham. Win or loss?
Loss.
Okay, loss. What would you think would go wrong for the Pistons in that type of matchup for there to be a loss? Is Shai going for 35? Like, are you worried the Pistons can't slow him down, or is it just a team win for OKC?
I think it's just a team win for OKC, strictly because you're coming off 2 games against the Wizards where realistically, as far as scouting wise, or even how much work you're putting into that, those should be 2 wins and 2 easy wins. So you go from easy to Oklahoma City, who is by far one of the best teams in the NBA. That's going to be a very hard matchup.
Totally. And Ryan, as we're going through this, can you help me keep track of your record? Because I don't have great notes. So just so like we can know your final record out of 16 games. All right. And then the Detroit Pistons travel to New Orleans, an injury prone New Orleans Pelicans team. Win or loss, Ryan?
Win.
All right, win. Then the Detroit Pistons travel to Miami to take on the Tyler Hero Heat. Win or loss?
Win.
All right, I love it. I love it. And then on the third game, on an away streak for the Pistons, they go into Dallas versus the, I don't know, weird roster of the Mavericks, injury-prone Mavericks, all the things. Win or loss, Brian?
Win.
I love it. I love it. Now, after the Pistons had just played 2 games previously in New Orleans, the Pelicans go to Little Caesars Arena to go against the Detroit Pistons and Jalen Duren. Ryan, win or loss?
Loss.
Okay. What is the big contributor in that?
I just think, New Orleans, Miami, and Dallas, even though it could be seen as easy, it's going to be hard to win those 3 games. And I think they're just going to be tired out from being on the road. And then beating New Orleans pretty much back to back is going to be pretty hard to do. I can understand them going to New Orleans and beating them there, but it'll be tough coming off of 3 games and 3 wins and just having that mindset of like, oh crap, we got to beat the Pelicans again. So I just see it as that.
So on Friday, March 21st, they play the Mavericks. Right away, Sunday, March 23rd, they play the Pelicans. So they will only have 1 rest day. That's not the best for a young Detroit Pistons team. So I'm right there with you. I see that. And then after they play the Pelicans, San Antonio comes into town, into Detroit, and plays at Little Caesars Arena. Ryan, win or loss?
Win.
Win. They beat the De'Aaron Fox and the San Antonio Spurs. 3 days later, the Cleveland Cavaliers come into Little Caesars Arena, and they're healthy and they're just trouble right now. They're playing so well. Ryan, win or loss against the Cleveland Cavaliers for the Pistons?
See, I can see that either going either way, really. Just because the way we played Cleveland to begin the year, we actually could have won that game. But
Totally. Lost on
I can
buzzer
also
beater.
see it as a loss because the way Donovan Mitchell has been playing recently, and just the Cavs in general, and I can see them losing this game to the Cleveland Cavaliers.
So we'll count that as a loss. My only thing is Pistons fans better come in full force when the Cavs come to town.
Oh
It's
yeah,
going to be an awesome game, and they better be loud because that's the Pistons' best shot at really trying to swing the energy in their favor. I also have this Cleveland versus Pistons game as a loss for the Pistons. I just think they're playing so good right now, chemistry at an all time high. Um, 2 days later, Detroit travels to Minnesota to take on Anthony Edwards and the Timberwolves. Ryan, win or loss?
depends if Anthony Edwards is having a good game or not, but usually he is.
Yeah,
So I'm going to go with the loss.
copy. Sounds good. I have that as a loss also, just for the record. Detroit Pistons, while also, so they start the away series. They have 2 games away, one against the Timberwolves, and then they go directly into the Oklahoma City Thunder game. Ryan, win or loss? That's a tough away run.
Loss.
Lost to the OKC, which right, they're playing good too. It's basically the Cavs and the Thunder that are just playing at an all-time high right now. And then the Detroit Pistons travel to Toronto to play the Raptors. Ryan, win or loss?
Win.
And then the Pistons finally get a home game versus the Memphis Grizzlies. This is where we will be in Detroit April 5th. Ryan, win or loss?
See, I see this as a 50-50
Yeah,
solely because John Morant can either be hot or cold. And if he's cold, Jaren Jackson Jr. is hot.
yeah.
And so it's just like who's going off, Batman or Robin for the Grizzlies. Um, but I have it down as a win.
Me too. I have that as a win, and it's not just because we'll be there. It's because I think the Pistons can beat this Grizzlies team. It just depends on any given night, right? Right. It just depends
Oh
on
yeah.
who's making their shots with a matchup like that. And then the Sacramento Kings come into town to Little Caesars Arena to take on Cade and the Pistons. We will also be on at that game. Win or loss, Ryan?
See, again, like the Grizzlies, I see this as a 50-50. I have it down as a win, but the reason
Yeah.
it's a 50-50 is because you can never count against Domantas Sabonis. He is by far one of the
Right.
most efficient bigs in the NBA. He should have been an all-star this year, but wasn't, shockingly. And then DeMar DeRozan's always a stud. Obviously, he doesn't have a great win-loss record when it comes to the championship because he really hasn't been there. But the point is, like, he always gets his own. Um, and the Zach LaVine is always good. Domantas Sabonis is always good. So that should be a tough matchup, but I do see that as a win.
Yeah, for some reason I like seeing us win against the Sacramento Kings. That's my prediction. Obviously, it's a prediction, never know what happens. But I like our shot against the Sacramento Kings, especially at the point guard position. After that, the New York Knicks come into town on April 10th. Ryan, this is a good matchup. I'll be looking forward to this game a lot. We'll have to watch this together. New York Knicks versus the Pistons, win or loss?
That's tough because we've
I
already
know.
beaten them what, twice this year.
Yes,
So I don't. It's so hard to beat a team 3 times,
totally.
and because of that, I have it down as a loss. But I think it
Okay.
really could go 50-50.
Okay. I've liked our matchups versus the Knicks, and this very well, we'll talk about this in a couple minutes, could be the team the Detroit Pistons see in the first round of the playoffs. I like the way we match up against the Knicks. I have it as a win, but I totally understand they're a tough team. You know, they're no team to blink at. And then the last 2 games of the season, the Detroit Pistons take on the infamous Milwaukee Bucks with Giannis Antetokounmpo. The first game, Giannis and the Bucks go into Little Caesars Arena on April 11th. Ryan, win or loss?
Win.
I like it too. I think it'll be ruckus because everyone knows the Pistons and the Bucks kind of have a little rivalry going. I think they'll win it in Little Caesars Arena, and then 2 days later on Sunday, April 13th, the Detroit Pistons go into Fiserv Arena versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Ryan, win or loss?
Loss.
Me too. I agree. I think they split it there. I think it depends on the home court advantage. Both arenas are going to be rocking. Both fan bases excited for playoff basketball, and we'll just be ready to get into it. I think it's going to be very, very fun to watch. Ryan, what was your final record for the last 16 games of the season?
9-7.
9-7. Very cool. I love it. I have the Pistons in my final 16 games going 11-5. I think our only discrepancy was you had the Pelicans. One of the games was you had the Pelicans losing to the Pistons losing to the Pelicans at Little Caesars Arena, and there's one other game in there. Make sure to comment below your thoughts on what the Pistons last 16 games of the season record could look like, whether you think they're going 11-5 or you agree with Ryan with going 9-7. I think it's some of these games are flip floppy. Ryan, I think we both can agree this last 16 games are nothing to blink at. There's some tough teams in this last 16 games.
Yeah, oh yeah. This is probably by far one of the hardest last 16 game schedules the Pistons have had in a while. And this, to me, is like prove it basketball right now. Prove that you should be in the playoffs because you're not going up against some rinky dinks. Yeah, you have a couple here and there with Washington and Toronto, but and even Dallas. But you have Oklahoma City twice. You have Minnesota. You have Memphis. You have New York. You have the Bucks. You have the Heat. The Pelicans are nothing to blink at either. Like this is a very tough schedule to end the season with.
Yeah, it'll be a very exciting basketball. So if you're a Detroit Pistons fan out there, which I assume if you're watching this, you are a Pistons fan, make sure to be tuning in on Bally Sports and buying some tickets for Little Caesars Arena. So as we quickly approach the playoffs, you always want to talk about matchups and seeding and who the Pistons could play against in the first round. And how it works as far as seeding is the number 8 seed goes against the first seed. The number 7 seed goes against the second. The 6th seed goes against the third, and the 5th versus 4th in that other round. So Ryan, it would be awesome if the Detroit Pistons could get to the 5th seed, because then we are potentially playing the Milwaukee Bucks or the Indiana Pacers. Right now, the Detroit Pistons are just one game behind the Indiana Pacers for that 5th spot. And they're also only 2 games behind the Milwaukee Bucks for the 4th spot. So Ryan, by the time the Pistons reach the playoffs, they could potentially be looking at a top 4 spot in the Eastern Conference standings. As far as all of the different scenarios of where the Pistons could end up at, who they could be playing, who would you be most excited about the Pistons playing in the first round when it came to like winnability in the 7-game series?
I think the Knicks are very winnable, but usually 3 doesn't play 6. So, right, because 1-7, 2-6, yeah, 2-6. So we would have, if we were 6 overall, we would have Boston. And
no, yeah, it's
no?
6 versus 3, 7 versus 2, 5 versus 4, and 8 versus 1.
Oh yeah, right. Gotcha. So yeah,
Yep.
the Knicks are beatable. Bucks, I think, actually are beatable. But it's strictly how you match up against Giannis. And if you take Giannis out of that team, oh my goodness. I love Damian Lillard, but that team is extremely beatable without Giannis.
Yeah.
And then even the Pacers, even though the Pacers have had our number during the regular season, I truly believe come playoff time, they choke for a reason. And
Yeah.
I think Cade matching up against Tyrese Halliburton, it's going to be a whole nother thing because Tyrese isn't going to be able to do anything against Cade because I think Cade is going to elevate his game once again.
Yeah, I would love a series versus the Indiana Pacers. That's absolutely ideal. I wish we could have the Miami Heat in a 7-game series. Right now, they're sitting at 7. So for the Pistons to even have a shot, they'd have to be the 2nd seed if playoffs ended tonight or like today. But I would love the Indiana Pacers. I'm more scared of the Bucks than the Knicks. because there's that factor of the big Greek freak. You know what I mean? And he scares me a little bit, Ryan. Giannis scares me, and I'd rather go up against Jalen Brunson than the Knicks than the Bucks. In me personally, who would you rather get?
Honestly, I'd rather get the Bucks than the Knicks.
Okay,
And again, that's going back to we have the third and final matchup of the season against them. I guess honestly, what happens in that game will make me feel a certain way towards the Knicks come playoff time. But it's hard to beat a team multiple times in one season, even if it is regular season or not. It's very hard to beat a team more than once. And so, granted, the Bucks are in our division, but like it's the Bucks. If you take away Giannis, it's a beatable team. So I'd fare more strongly against the Bucks than the Knicks, just because Karl Anthony Towns is going to have a good game against the Pistons come playoff time because he's always good in the playoffs. Obviously, we haven't seen him with the Knicks yet, but he's always good in the playoffs. As far as Brunson goes, Brunson just seems to do wonders in the playoffs, and I can't stand that. So I just think from Brunson and from Bridges and from just their whole team, I would be scared to play them in the playoffs at Madison Square Garden.
I am so excited for the playoffs, Ryan. I am geared up. Very, very excited. Make sure to comment below who you would like to see the Detroit Pistons going up against. Obviously, with 16 games left, there's a lot of basketball to be had and a lot of anxieties, questions that still have to be answered. So this is my favorite time of the year. Playoff basketball quickly approaching, and then March Madness about to be in full effect. It's just a great basketball season. So just buckle up, enjoy it, and while we can have it, because pretty soon it'll be gone before we know it. So just make sure to enjoy it if you're a Detroit Pistons fan, because we are in the golden age of Detroit Pistons basketball right now. And don't forget it. People always worry about, oh, I miss the good old days. Don't miss it. Enjoy it while we have it, because we have a great Detroit Pistons team right now, and just enjoy it and take it all in, hold on to it, and never forget it, because Detroit basketball, baby, it's that time of the year. Make sure to like and subscribe. That will do it for today's episode. I'd love to see you guys comment below. We will see you guys in the next episode. Peace.